Yossi and Kevin soon realized that going by river was a big mistake. The river got faster and faster, and soon they were in rapids. The raft was swept down the river at an incredible speed until it hit a rock. Both men were thrown into the water. Kevin was a strong swimmer, and he managed to swim to land. But Yossi was swept away by the rapids.
Yossi! Help! Help! Kev! Yossi!
But Yossi didn't drown. He was carried several kilometers downriver by the rapids, but he eventually managed to swim to the riverbank. He was totally exhausted. By an incredible piece of luck, he found their backpack floating in the river. The backpack contained a little food, insect repellent, a lighter, and, most important of all, the map. But the two friends were now separated by a canyon and 6 or 7 kilometers of jungle. Kevin was feeling desperate. He didn't know if Yossi was alive or dead, but he started walking downriver to look for him. He felt responsible for what had happened to his friend, because he had persuaded him to go with him on the river.
Yossi! Yossi!
Yossi, however, was feeling quite optimistic. He was sure that Kevin would look for him, so he started walking upriver, calling his friend's name.
Kevin! Kevin! Kevin!
But nobody answered. At night, Yossi tried to sleep, but he felt terrified. The jungle was full of noises. Suddenly, he woke up because he heard a branch breaking. He turned on his flashlight. There was a jaguar staring at him. Yossi was trembling with fear. But then he remembered something that he had once seen in a film. He used a cigarette lighter to set fire to the insect repellent spray. And he managed to scare the jaguar away. After 5 days alone, Yossi was exhausted and starving. Suddenly, as he was walking, he saw a footprint on the trail. It was a hiking boot. It had to be Kevin's footprint.
Kevin!
He followed the trail until he discovered another footprint, and then another. But suddenly, he realized that the footprints weren't Kevin's footprints. They were his own. He had been walking around in a circle. At that moment, Yossi realized that he would never find Kevin. In fact, he felt sure that Kevin must be dead. He felt totally depressed and on the point of giving up. But Kevin wasn't dead. He was still looking for Yossi. But after nearly a week, he was also weak and exhausted from lack of food and lack of sleep. He decided that it was time to forget Yossi and try to save himself. He had just enough strength left to hold onto a log and let himself float down the river. Kevin was incredibly lucky. He was rescued by 2 Bolivian hunters who were travelling downriver in a canoe. The men only hunted in that part of the rainforest once a year, so if they had passed by a short time earlier or later, they wouldn't have seen Kevin. They took him back to the town of San Jose, where he spent 2 days recovering. As soon as Kevin felt well enough, he went to a Bolivian army base and asked them to look for Yossi.
Mi amigo está
My friend is lost in the
en la
jungle.
selva. deben buscarle.
You must look for him.
The army officer he spoke to was sure that Yossi must be dead. But in the end, Kevin persuaded them to take him up in a plane and fly over the part of the rainforest where Yossi might be. But the plane had to fly too high over the rainforest, and the forest was too dense. They couldn't see anything at all. It was a hopeless search. Kevin felt terribly guilty. He was convinced that it was all his fault that Yossi was going to die in the jungle. Kevin's last hope was to pay a local man with a boat to take him up the river to look for his friend. By now, Yossi had been on his own in the jungle for nearly 3 weeks. He hadn't eaten for days. He was starving, exhausted, and slowly losing his mind. It was evening. He lay down by the side of the river, ready for another night alone in the jungle. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a bee buzzing in his ear. He thought a bee had got inside his mosquito net. But when he opened his eyes, he saw that the buzzing noise wasn't a bee. It was a boat. Yossi was too weak to shout. But Kevin had already seen him.
Yossi! Yossi! Yossi!
It was a 1 in a million chance that Kevin would find his friend, but he did. Yossi was saved. When Yossi had recovered, he and Kevin flew to the city of La Paz, and they went directly to the hotel where they had agreed to meet Marcus and Carl. But Marcus and Carl were not at the hotel. The two men had never arrived back in the town of Apollo. The Bolivian army organized a search of the rainforest, but Marcus and Carl were never seen again.